going to step up or not.
Hello everyone, I'm Brevin Thompson.
And I'm Cameron Simpson.
Since we're continuing on with the MCU, we are on Spider-Man Far From Home, directed once again by Jon Watts, and continuing after the events of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Peter Parker in this movie is like going through a lot, and he's like he has like a lot on his shoulders in this film. I mean, having the possibility of like having to fill in Tony Stark's shoes after Tony's death in the events of Endgame. Yeah. And of course, I mean, this is kind of like when it comes to this film in particular, I think this is like him taking his first few steps of eventually becoming Spider-Man, because what I like about this film is that they amp up the stakes compared to Homecoming, because it was much more small scale, and it kind of gives like Peter some time to just breathe and kind of like adapt, which is kind of understandable given the direction that they were going for this character, and given what we've seen in various interpretations of Spider-Man in film over the years. I still think that Tom Holland, for the most part, I think is still the best Spider-Man that we've had since Tobey Maguire in the Sam Raimi films. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that he gets more time to shine as Spider-Man. But in terms of what I think about Spider-Man Far From Home, I still think it's a good Spider-Man film. And it does something really special and very rare for a Spider-Man film, because this is the only film in Spider-Man history to not fully take place in New York City, which is, I like that it actually tries to do something different, because instead of like having like Spider-Man having to save New York City, instead he has to save Western Europe, which is kind of interesting. And one of my favorite aspects of the film is Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. And for one thing, I'm a huge Mysterio fan, and I wanted to see this character in a Spider-Man film for a very long time since I was a kid. And Jake Gyllenhaal has been trying to get involved in a Spider-Man film for quite some time. Because in Spider-Man 2, I mean, he almost was Spider-Man when Tobey Maguire had a back injury when he was filming Seabiscuit. Because Tobey Maguire, at that time, he almost couldn't return for Spider-Man 2, and Jake Gyllenhaal was originally supposed to replace him. So I like the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal has an opportunity to like be in a Spider-Man film, but this time as Mysterio. Yeah. But still, I mean, he's great in this film, and what he manages to do with this, I mean, he managed to like have me fooled. But I mean, I knew that at some point, because I knew that he wasn't exactly what he seemed, especially for what we've seen in the trailers, because he's always been, I mean, because in the trailers he's depicted as the good guy, who's here to help Spider-Man defeat the elementals. Yeah. But of course, I mean, because given that Mysterio is the master of illusion, I mean, you know he is one deceptive son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's really astonishing. As far as my personal opinion goes for Jake
Gyllenhaal?
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. Sorry, I haven't quite memorized his name yet. But as far as him being Mysterio, I thought he was a really nice choice. When I found out Spider-Man 4 for Tobey Maguire was canceled, I found an early concept online that showed
Bruce Campbell as Mysterio, which I would have liked, honestly.
Yeah.
Which I would have liked that.
The illusions that Mysterio casts, he really lives up to his name here as the Master of Illusions, because he even had me fooled pretty much the entire time.
He has like multiple trump cards, I mean, which is like kind of fitting for a character such as this. What they managed to do, the team who come up with the visual effects for these films, you just gotta give them a round of applause. So this film takes place apparently about like a few months after the events of Endgame, and like how after the Avengers like reverse the snap, and because like Peter Parker, Ned, and all of his other friends have like disappeared over the past 5 years. I mean, before the events of Endgame, they already like gone through like midterms, so they had to restart the entire school year, which is complete bullshit to them. And if I was in their shoes, I would kind of agree with that.
Yeah, they started calling this new snap
The blip.
Yeah, because I could kind of see where they were going from here. Because the snap was them going away, and the blip is like them coming back, like real slowly, like many years later. So it's kind of like, I guess you could put that with like how a blip moves, how quickly it goes from one place to the next.
Yeah.
And you know, like after they come back 5 years later, they show up exactly where they were in the spot they were disintegrated. So the world had a lot of adjustments they needed to make for the people that didn't get snapped out and the people that did. And for them, it's just a really overwhelming process, because some people had younger brothers who are now older than them. It's just really,
no, it's
really,
insane.
but the world is starting to like recover from that, and that's good news. It shows that they can adapt even to something this big.
Oh yeah, and when it comes to like Peter Parker in this film, I mean, he's like I mentioned before, he has like a lot on his shoulders. I mean, people questioning him on like, is he gonna be leading the Avengers? Is he taking up for Tony Stark? And I mean, this is kind of like really overwhelming for him. I mean, which is kind of like mostly what you would expect for a character such as Spider-Man. And for a large chunk of the film, things are not really going in Peter's way, because he's just trying to have a normal life. Have a normal teenage life outside of his duties as Spider-Man, which is one of the few things that has always made Spider-Man my favorite superhero. It was always between him and Batman. But you do feel a lot of sympathy for Peter in this film, but I think mostly Spider-Man 2 mostly like did, for the most part, a good job of like capturing how difficult it is for Peter to struggle balancing his normal life and his duties as Spider-Man. But in this film, however, I mean, he's dealing with a lot. I mean, he's already lost his mentor, who is a father figure to him, Tony Stark. And Avengers Endgame, and he's like dealing with the possibility of like possibly filling in Tony's shoes, which he feels like he's not fully prepared for yet, and he's going on a vacation in Europe, and when he goes on his vacation to Europe, I mean, he has like everything planned out. I mean, he wants to take MJ to the Eiffel Tower. I mean, when it comes to MJ, played by Zendaya, she is pretty good in this film. I really like her relationship between her and Peter, and I do think that Tom Holland and Zendaya have good chemistry, which makes sense because they are a couple in real life, and I do their chemistry works for the most part, and I really love them in this film. But how things turned out when they eventually get to Venice, and when we see what appears to be Hydro Man, I mean, like I said, when it comes to the visuals, I mean, you just got to give the team a round of applause, because they deliver something that blows your mind, and of course,
really, and
it's just mind blowing, like I said.
Yeah, and as far as like Zendaya goes portraying MJ, personally, when I first found out what her character was supposed to be, MJ and all, I found out it stood for Michelle Jones, and it took me a little time to get used to that, because I prefer Mary Jane Watson. But,
yeah, because, I mean, when you think of MJ, of course, you think of Mary Jane.
But at the same time, I like that little change. I'm starting to really
because she's mostly supposed to be a homage to that character, which I do respect, because, I mean, I know they're trying not to, like, repeat, like, what both Mark Webb and Sam Raimi did in their films. So I can respect the filmmakers for trying to do something different in terms of giving Peter a new love interest outside of Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy.
Mysterio takes down Hydro Man, the second of the elementals, after the Sandman-looking one at the beginning of the movie.
And Nick Fury steps in and tries to recruit Peter to try to like team up with him and Mysterio to combat against these elementals. And when it comes to Samuel L. Jackson, I mean, he is perfect as Nick Fury, and it's just he's Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, I love the shit out of this guy, and I always have since I was a kid. He's one of my personal favorite actors working on film, I don't really ever recall him ever giving a bad performance in a film. Even if it is a bad film, he still makes it tolerable. But I mean, this is Samuel L. Jackson. He's Samuel L. Jackson. He's the best.
What? Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man of many talents, but not easy to describe, I guess. However, I guess that's pretty much a good thing. You don't really need to describe him. He speaks for himself. Right after Nick Fury shows up in the hotel room, he tranquilizes Ned with a trank gun. And
that was just hilarious, especially with him snorting, with Ned snorting with him. I mean, between their like him like briefing Peter on like what's going on with the elementals and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. He keeps trying to tell him he's not an easy person to contact, and he used to be the man who knew everything. Now 5 years later, he knows nothing because he got snapped away, and a kid from high school is blocking his calls.
Yeah, that's just perfect. Eventually, Nick Fury, I mean, he gives Peter the EDITH glasses, and this is an important, thing in the film. I mean, this is basically the film's MacGuffin, you can say.
Yeah, basically, right when Peter gets the glasses, they go to a different spot to do this thing because people keep interrupting their conversations at the hotel room.
Yeah, he's like, and one more person knocks that door, you and I are going to have another funeral to attend.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And he does this quote that I think is pretty interesting. He goes, "Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown." And personally, I think, and this is just me, but he says, I think that that's like a Shakespearean way of saying, with great power comes great responsibility, in a way.
But he was like, Stark,
Stark said you wouldn't understand that
because it wasn't a Star Wars reference.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yes, but of course, I mean, they get together, they brief with both Peter and Mysterio, and of course he comes up with some backstory with the elementals and how like they invaded his supposed Earth and killed his family as well, and it becomes very convincing for us in the audience, especially when I saw this back in 2019. But I was still having my doubts on this character back then, because I mean, at one point he's gonna flip a wild card eventually. But I do think that the relationship between Peter and Quentin Beck, who is Mysterio, I do think that I do like the interactions between these two characters, especially in like one spot that appears in later in the film when they're trying to go over like what they're gonna do, and I do think that in particular in that one scene, and especially in one scene in a bar when Peter eventually gives Beck the EDITH glasses, I do think that for the most part that that Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal do have good chemistry, and it becomes a little bit heartbreaking when Mysterio does his heel turn, and that's when you're like, yep, he is one deceptive son of a bitch. Yeah, and for those of you who may or may not have seen this, and you wonder why Peter would give him that, even though Stark left it for him, when Peter got the glasses, he found a note inside the case that said, "For the next Tony Stark, I trust you." Now, the way I see it, from what Peter might have been thinking, there is two ways that he could have interpreted that. Either that he was meant to have EDITH, or that he was meant to find the next person who was supposed to. And I guess he told Beck that he probably thought that Stark gave him the glasses because he knew he wasn't ready for this type of responsibility, so he entrusted him to find the person who was ready, who was meant to actually have EDITH, so he gave the glasses to Beck thinking that he was the person they needed, and that actually later turned out to be a very, very stupid mistake. What happens before that with Peter in his stealth suit? I like the design for this suit, so I like how Ned comes up with the nickname Night Monkey, which is kind of funny. I'm surprised that that he didn't use Spider Monkey, which would have been weird because but it would have been funny though. It would have been funny, but yeah, I'm glad I'm okay with Night Monkey, so that gets a pass.
When it comes to his name, Night Monkey, the main reason they did that is because, you see, they didn't have him use his classic suit from the other movie as much because...
Yeah, like, when they arrive in Venice and, we see, this one lady, opening up Peter's suitcase and we see that his classic suit is in the suitcase. I'm surprised that she never once questioned why there's a Spider-Man suit. Yeah. And even if she did, I think that the best excuse, this would have been hilarious. I would have laughed my ass off if Peter just said, oh, it's just for a cosplay party. That would have been perfect. I would have laughed my ass off if he said that. Yeah. But instead she's like, she sees a banana, she's like, no. Yeah. That was funny though.
Yeah. Personally though, I think that's probably what they were going for because Spider-Man's pretty famous now, so they probably could have done that with the intention of him like a cosplay thing.
Yeah.
But Peter was too shocked that Aunt May snuck the suit into his suitcase to really say anything.
Yeah, but he knew that if Spider-Man were
after the incident in Washington, Peter knew that if Spider-Man were to be seen in Italy, then
people are going to be suspecting that he is Spider-Man, so they had to make a new suit for him, which was the stealth suit. And when it came to the fight with Molten Man, I do like the design for this creature, and it looks pretty terrifying. But you can buy that as a type of threat of even Beck said for one elemental that he created with illusion tech. When he comes up with the final elemental, he's like, that's an Avengers level threat.
Yeah.
But of course, they take down the Molten Man elemental, and of course that's when we get to the scene with Peter handing Beck the glasses, and this is the scene where he eventually reveals his heel turn, and that he throughout the entire time all the elementals were actually illusions. And he's not, in fact, a hero from another dimension, but in fact a former Stark Industries employee who created the barf holographic thing that we saw in Captain America Civil War in that one scene with Tony. And Tony fired Beck because of his unstable nature. Yeah. And when his heel turn was revealed, I was just like, I fucking knew it. But when it comes to the one moment with MJ telling Peter that she knows that he's Spider-Man, or at least suspects it, I do like I said, I like the chemistry between her and Peter. She gets a few pretty funny lines, and that's kind of what I like about this character. And of course, when she reveals that when she finds out, which she suspects that Peter is Spider-Man because, him and his stealth suit, the Night Monkey suit, that she suspects that he and Spider-Man, use the same webbing, and of course, she accidentally activates, the one of the projectors for, Mysterio's illusions, and of course, that's when Peter realizes that he made a huge mistake giving Mysterio the EDITH glasses. So he tries to contact Fury, and of course, that's when Mysterio finds out that Peter knows the truth. And when it comes to that scene with Mysterio, using various different types of illusions against Spider-Man, the visuals.
Yeah,
this is something you would see in a Doctor Strange film, but this is next level shit, right here.
I honestly cannot tell you how awesome that looks. There's so many visual effects. The first time I saw it, it just messed with my head.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just, like, throwing, like, random different stuff at Spider-Man left and right and center with these illusions.
Yeah,
and, of course, he, like, uses, like, an illusion of Fury to try to get Peter to reveal, like, who else, like, knows of Mysterio's secret and his eventual plan to eventually destroy most of London. And of course, I mean, Spider-Man is, like, duped into, like, revealing who else knows, like, Ned, MJ, and possibly, Betty, who is,
Ned's
girlfriend. Yeah. And this goes so far as to end with Spider-Man getting hit by a fucking train. So next after that, he contacts Happy Hogan, played masterfully by Jon Favreau. But mostly when it comes to Jon Favreau, he is just great. I've always loved his appearances in the MCU and what he has been doing in the MCU. I mean, both as an actor and as a director mostly for the first Iron Man. He's just great. And I like the conversation that he and Peter had while they're on this private jet, and like how much Peter like misses Tony and how difficult it is. He's finding it like possibly like filling in his shoes, and that he knows that he's not gonna be the next Iron Man, and how like I like how Happy even acknowledges like you're not Iron Man, like you can't live up to Tony. Nobody could live up to Tony. Not even Tony.
I mean, Tony was he told Peter that Tony was his best friend, and he was a complete mess. He second-guessed everything that he ever did. The one thing that he did that he didn't second-guess was picking Peter.
Yeah.
And he tells Peter in that conversation, which I cannot tell you how beautifully scripted that is.
Yeah, it has really good writing.
Yeah, he basically tells Peter that he doesn't think that Tony would have done what he did if he didn't think that Peter wasn't gonna be here when he was gone. And then he tells Peter, "You're all alone. Your tech is missing. Your friends are in danger. What are you going to do about it?"
And I love Peter's answer. I'm going to kick his ass. And
yeah.
I like how when he's like developing a new suit, they have like AC/DC's Back in Black playing, which is a good callback to the original Iron Man, because that's how the original Iron Man starts out, like, when we hear Back in Black with Tony and a convoy with the army. That's like a good callback. And everything that happens in the finale with like Mysterio like using his next illusion, which is like all the other elementals combined into like one massive monster, and just trying to like do a whole lot of damage while trying to like kill Peter's friends. And of course Peter shows up and tries to, I mean, he gets through like a lot of shit in this. I mean, and throughout, I mean, and by the end, I mean, his suit is like torn, burnt up, and everything. Not at like the almost close to the same level as like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Almost like every finale, I mean, his suit is torn up.
I personally prefer the one from Homecoming myself, but I like the new design they made where it was red and black, and it kind of reminded me a little of like the Superior Spider-Man from the comics.
In a way.
When Doc Ock takes over Peter's body and he makes a suit, it's kind of similar to that. It's pretty interesting.
But when Spider-Man finally goes up against Mysterio and counteracts the illusions with his Peter Tingle, which is his way of describing his spider sense.
Which is not the official name, I don't think. And we all know it's Spider Sense, but I think that's just like a prototype name that they came up with, but they'll probably change it later.
Yeah, but I like how like he like counteracts the illusion with his spider sense and like taking care of all these drones by just closing his eyes and just relying on his spider sense. That is badass, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. And of course, I mean, Mysterio is accidentally shot by one of the drones, and right when we think that that Mysterio is surrendering the glasses to Peter, I mean, he actually is using a different illusion just to try to trick Peter and just shoot him point blank with a gun. And of course, Peter like knows it. And that is just awesome. Like how he like
Yeah.
grabs his hand. He's like, "You can't trick me anymore."
Yeah.
So he takes Edith's the Edith glasses and shuts down the drones. And I love like how he asks Beck like, "How could he have done all of this?" And he's like, "You'll see, Peter. You'll see, Peter. People need to believe, and nowadays people will believe anything." Which will come into play later in the mid-credit scene.
Yeah. And this next scene I thought was very, like, just touching in so many ways. Right after Peter, like, takes care of all the drones, MJ, like, comes to find him in case he needs more help and brings a mace. And they pretty much talk about this whole thing, and she says that Happy kind of gave her this medallion that's a little broken. Turned out to be a black dahlia flower from, like, murder or something. It's something that MJ really likes. And Peter knows that realizes that it's broken. He tries to apologize, and then she just up and kisses him, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a really touching moment of like how they profess their love for each other, and it's really good. Like I said, they have great chemistry, and they work so well.
They really do.
Yeah, and I like that how like when they eventually get back home, and when Peter finds out that Aunt May and Happy are dating. I mean, I like how Happy just blurts out in like one moment. He's like, "I'm in love with Spider-Man's aunt."
Yeah, because they're all just sharing truths about each other in the Crown Jewels vault when they think they're about to die from some drones.
Yeah, it's just like
it's
but
hilarious.
while Peter and MJ are going on their first date swinging, that's just amazing.
What happens is basically just as Peter's about to take off, when he drops MJ back onto the street, like they swing down back to street level, and he's about to take off, but just as he's about to leave, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson from the Daily Bugle, which we cannot express our gratitude enough for bringing him
J.K.
back.
Simmons is back. I mean, that put a huge smile on my face. But the first time I saw that in the theater, I was just like, J.K. Simmons is back. I was just like, what? I'm like, they got him back. So he releases a doctored photo that Mysterio came up with moments before his death, framing Spider-Man for the attack in London, and going so far as to reveal his secret identity to the world. And I love Peter's reaction, and they've been well justified, like going, "What the fuck?" And it cuts out right before he can completely say his sentence.
Yeah, just like Aunt May did when she found out. It was.
Yeah.
I honestly cannot tell you just how much of a surprise that was for me the first time. I mean, seriously, that is like just awesome right there. I mean, it's like shocking as heck. But it's also quite interesting.
And apparently Nick Fury has been Talos this entire time. Since when? I have no clue. But Talos has been like working with Nick Fury this entire time, while Nick Fury has been operating on a spaceship occupied by Skrulls from Captain Marvel. Yeah. So how long has he been doing this shit? I'm just like left with so many unanswered questions. I'm just like, okay, this needs some answers. But overall, when it comes to Spider-Man Far From Home, I do like it significantly better than Homecoming because it amps up the stakes. It delivers like a lot of things, like having like Peter like taking a few steps forward of eventually becoming Spider-Man. And the cast works well. I mean, the visuals are beautiful. Almost everything about this film is perfect. It's not perfect at all by any means. It just left a few things that like left me just scratching my head. But still, it didn't really keep me from enjoying the film. I mean, it's entertaining. It just, I mean, especially with the mid-credits, it flips a massive trump card on the audience. Yeah. It's just something I did not expect.
Yeah, and I personally, while I admit that perhaps maybe there could be a little bit problematic in the fact that most of the villains in this film are essentially illusions and fake, at the same time, I do very much enjoy this film, and I do think that since it's kind of serving a purpose to lead up to what's going to happen in this new one, that I think is just going to be like off the scale epic. I honestly think that it is a great Spider-Man film. I believe personally that Tom Holland is a worthy Spider-Man. In fact, probably the best one yet.
Yes.
And I sincerely, really hope that he continues to be Spider-Man for quite some time and a lot more movies in his own franchise.
In regards to Spider-Man Far From Home, it's still a fun film to watch, and it's definitely one of my favorite Spider-Man films. So I'm going to give Spider-Man Far From Home an A. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.